Let's get into the Michigan offense here against UNLV's defense, which is kind of a base 3-3-5, a base 3-2-6 most of the time. That's what Barry Odom, who the head coach at UNLV, ran at Arkansas as the defensive coordinator and assistant head coach the last 3 seasons under Sam Pittman. I was talking to a UNLV writer yesterday, and he said, for example, on how kind of small they are with some of the guys that play towards the line of scrimmage, slot corner Jeray Williams was listed before the season as an outside linebacker. He's 5'10", 185 pounds. So that's kind of the way this team plays, and I thought that was a great example, so I'm glad he said that. Barry Odom said this week, quote, "We've got to be in a position that we can load the box to try to stop the run." Obviously, similar to what ECU did last week, trying to really sell out there to stop Michigan's run game. Bryant, an FCS team that apparently is not supposed to be very good this year, they ran for over 200 yards on UNLV last week. They actually outgained UNLV in a 44-14 UNLV win. So you would think Michigan should have some success here loading the box or not. Your guys' thoughts on Michigan's offense this week after last week? Lowest amount of rushing yards Michigan's had in a game since 2021, but they still were extremely efficient offensively, open up the passing game.
Yeah, 2 things with that. One, ECU had all summer, right, to implement that defense for Michigan. Watched the TCU game. They have a good defensive front, solid anyway. That was the strength of their team. So I don't think there's any question that helped them. UNLV is poor defensively. I watched the highlights. I watched good bits of that game. I don't think they can stack the box all they want to. I think a couple of times there were still plays to be made there. Maybe the tight ends missed a block or the running backs made a bad cut. So if you get by that front when everybody's committed to stopping the run, you're gone. I think we're going to see a few more big runs this week, guys. So I think it'll be one of those games where Blake Corum has a big game, and I think you'll see Donovan Edwards rip off a long run or 2 as well. So I'm not concerned about that. It's a gimmicky offense as well. I know we'll be talking about that, the UNLV offense, but I expect that this will be a balanced effort, but you'll see more rushing yards this week than passing yards, and J.J. McCarthy will still have a very good game.
I just don't see a scenario where Michigan can't get whatever it wants against this team, against this, they're wildly more physical. They are more athletic. This is a small defense that they'll be facing. I know they did a good job last week of getting off the field in sort of those money situations, but I feel like this is going to be a get-right game for, I put that in quotation marks, of course. That offensive line, I think we'll see them play better this week, impose their will a little bit more. And I think, again, when you have teams coming right out and saying our focus is on stopping the run, I think it becomes incumbent on you to kind of continue the momentum you built last week with the passing game. So they should have matchups all over the field that they can exploit. Colston Loveland, Cornelius Johnson, Roman Wilson. I see all of those guys having big games again, spreading the ball around. And then those backs, I think, giving them a little more space to run, I think is what the passing game can do for them if these teams are going to try and load the box. But, defensively, I just don't, short of a turnover, short of, something weird happening, like you start your opening drive down at the 2-yard line, I just don't see where UNLV is going to present a challenge for Michigan.
Yeah, and as Chris, you said, with ECU's front kind of being the strength of their defense last week, UNLV, it sounds like that's the weakness, the front 7, not much athleticism there. They have a couple, bigger guys up front, but again, it's a 3-man line, spin down the outside linebacker sometimes of the line of scrimmage, but there's just not a ton of talent. Their starting middle linebacker, Jackson Woodward, played 3 seasons for Barry Odom at Arkansas, hardly played at all. It was just a special teams guy. He's now their leading tackler through 1 game with 11 tackles. So, that's kind of the caliber, it seems like, of player they have up there. And they struggled mightily on defense last year too. So yeah, should be, interesting test to see like an odd front up there. I remember Michigan playing TCU last year and all those guys saying we don't really have anything to draw back on. If they see something like that later on in the year, this might be something to draw back on, not the talent level, but the scheme at least. So it'll be a test in that regard, but Michigan should handle it pretty easily. Let's flip over to the other side of the ball with Michigan's defense against UNLV's offense. And 3-2-6, weird scheme for UNLV's defense. They run the go-go offense, which their offensive coordinator, Brennan Marion, has literally written a book about. It's called Go-Go Offense. You can buy it on Amazon right now. Impressed with him overall. He has really risen up quickly, 36 years old. He was the wide receivers coach 2 years ago at Pitt, helped Jordan Addison win the Biletnikoff Award. Last year was the passing game coordinator at Texas, and this year running the offense there. But it is a wonky offense. Seen some of the clips with quarterback and shotgun, two running backs on the same side of him, fake to one guy, hand it to the other guy. But they spread things out, but it's basically a run-heavy offense. And they're going to run a lot of 20 personnel, 2 running backs, no tight ends. They're top 5 in the country right now so far this season in 20 personnel snaps with Doug Brumfield as the quarterback. Athletic dude, can get out and run. I think Michigan didn't do a great job last week at containing those quarterbacks from running, despite getting some of that pressure. And again, some of that pressure forces them to run. But Doug Brumfield will test them in that area. Your guys' thoughts on the go-go offense going up against the Michigan defense trying to get a lot of stops?
Yeah, it's a gimmick, and maintain your gaps and keep your linebackers clean, and you're going to be just fine. We saw the linebackers clean. I was watching the ECU film, and those guys were untouched most of the time against ECU. I would imagine that you're going to see I think you're going to see more throwing from UNLV in this game just because they didn't show a whole lot of it last week. They didn't have to. They've got some talented receivers, as Steve Klingscale said, so maybe they test those guys. Hopefully Will Johnson's back for Michigan. Rod Moore, we'll see. Will Johnson probably could have played last week, Michigan's cornerback. But the key to any offense is winning up front, and Michigan did that decidedly last week. I think you're going to see that again this week. I think UNLV will put maybe a few points up on the board, but the main thing is don't let them get the big plays. Don't break down with all the gimmicks and let your eyes go somewhere where they shouldn't be. It's all about eye discipline in the secondary and not letting the guy behind you in a broken play for a touchdown. They do that, I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah, when you play these offenses, and just everything I've read and seen, it is definitely a bit of a gimmick. But what they're trying to catch you off guard and pop you for a big play somewhere. And we know that Jesse Minter wants to play a lot of guys on defense. We know that Michigan likes to rotate. But this is going to be one of those games where it's going to test the conditioning of a lot of those Michigan defenders, and those guys are going to have to stay on the field. And if these drives are just kind of keep on going, then you're going to have to. You might be sucking wind by the end of a drive, but you got to find a way to get off the field, maybe turn this team over a few times. But yeah, it is. You have to run offense like this when you're not much of a threat to do things well consistently, and everything I've seen, we talked to Steve Klingscale yesterday, and he talks about how great the quarterback looked. And then you go look at the box score, and he was 11 for 16 for like 80 yards. And you watch some of the film, and he's just kind of launching the ball all over the place without a ton of accuracy. So we'll see. We'll see if UNLV can maybe pop one early and give Michigan a bit of a scare from that regard. But this is a week where your discipline is tested, where your conditioning is tested. And again, we talked about it last week, how even though when you're a big favorite in a game like this, there are things to prepare for that can kind of, you never know when it's going to come back later in the year. So it should be a good learning experience for those guys. But again, just another lopsided talent advantage for Michigan. Yeah,
Brumfield averaged 4.8 yards per attempt last week. So maybe that was better than the ECU quarterbacks. He's obviously athletic, but he was 0 of 5 on passes past 10 yards in air yards going past the line of scrimmage. So, and I don't know if he's going to have time to get many of those off in this game. Chris, you mentioned the talented wide receivers. Does UNLV have anyone on their team, on that roster, that you feel like could have the game of his life against Michigan?
No, absolutely not.
Not Ricky White?
Nobody. Oh, wow. I didn't even know he was on that team.
Ricky White from Michigan State, who I think 196 of his 225 receiving yards at MSU came against Michigan with no fans in the stands. So this will be his first time with fans. But Ricky White is on that football team. He'll be making his return.
I had no idea. Well, there you have it. Now I'm terrified.
He had 8 catches in that game. Has he even had 8 catches since then?
Probably not.
That's my question.
I think last year, but not at the Big Ten level, because he didn't play 2 years ago at MSU. Then he transfers to UNLV. So man, Ricky White will make it his return. I saw his press conference this week. He was saying it's a great atmosphere. It's like, dude, you never played there.
But they still have a statue to him outside of Spartan Stadium for that performance. So,
maybe he was talking about the cardboard cutouts being pretty loud in there. I don't know. There was pumped in crowd noise, but Ricky White is on that team, so he'll be making his return. I'm sure Michigan fans will let him hear it a little bit.
I bet they won't know.
What's that?
They won't even know. I didn't know. They won't even recognize his name, probably. Let's be honest. That was a throwaway season, and that game didn't really count. So there you have it.
Well, who are we?
Rocky Lombardi have it last year.
Yeah.
Who are we if not informers of the public?